Welcome back to another episode of Freedom Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Deese, and today we are hanging out with a good friend, Jimmy Spire, the founder and CEO of Glasshouse. Now, if you follow the show on a regular basis, you heard the episode that Jimmy and I did on, I believe it was episode 73. If you haven't heard it, definitely go back and check it out. It talks a little bit about Jimmy's journey and how he got to where he is now, and a little bit about Glasshouse and what they do. But today we're going to talk about something a little bit different. But before we dive in, Jimmy, thanks for coming and hanging out, man.
Oh man, thanks for having me again twice. So I got to step it up this time, but I'm excited to talk to you as always. It's always a good time.
Yeah, it was cool. And so we just had the Power Profit Workshop here live in Pensacola. It's been a couple of weeks ago now, and Jimmy was one of the sponsors. It was an amazing event. It was so much fun, and one of the big things that Glasshouse helped us do is we went to one of the minor league baseball games, and we got our own little area, and we all got to hang out and watch some solid minor league baseball. So yeah, I appreciate you being a part of that, and the support as always.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was fun. Minor league baseball game is always a good time, and got to meet a bunch of home service businesses and people from all over the country having the same problems or trying to solve for the same things, which is always cool.
Yeah, and not only were you a sponsor, you also were a presenter, and you talked about the four. Is it the four princess or three princess?
Oh no, it's the Disney Prince model of revenue. There it is. There's four ways to make more money.
We talked about that a little bit in episode 73. It was a really good topic, and you could hear everybody. They're like kind of thinking, and then they're going, oh, and you could see the light bulb moment for everybody as they're figuring out, how does a Disney Prince turn into revenue? It was really cool. But listen, the topic we want to talk about today is the current economy that we're in. There is a lot of murmuring and uncertainty, and with uncertainty comes a lot of times fear from people. And we've been hearing for the last couple of months the big T word, tariffs, and we're also seeing the effects of that. But now we're starting to trickle in and hear a little bit more about the R word. So I wanted Jimmy to come on and us to have a little bit of a conversation on what that filthy R word is. I'm not even going to say it. You're going to have to say it. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to put it out in the world.
That's fine. So I am in the enviable position of I get to talk to hundreds of home service businesses every month. So, sometimes 300, 400, 500 of them in a month. And so that gives us a little bit of insight across what's going on in various parts of the country or in various sub home service verticals, since we work with all different types of businesses. And over the last 2 months or so, we started to hear, and you can go back and look at the data in all of our recording, right? So we have recordings of all of our demos, our conversations for internal training, and we could see the word recession started to show up a little bit. It had never been there before. It kind of it's almost like when your mom says a swear word, it's like you heard it, and it's like hanging out. Whoa, I didn't hear that before. And so we heard that for the first time, and so I started paying attention to it. And that's what I thought we could talk about today. What Justin and I were chatting about ahead of time was, okay, well, what do we do with that? Mm-hmm. What do we do with that? Okay, now that word's out there, that means, I don't know about your opinion, but a lot of times it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're afraid of a recession, so we have a recession because of it. So what do we do about that? What does a home service business do about it?
Yeah, and I think that's a great topic. And, preparedness is something that we should all do. We should all be prepared for what ifs. And I think a lot of times as we go through today, I know you're going to give us some things to do in case of whatever happens, tariffs go up, recession happen, whatever it is. But I want everybody to keep this in mind. If you're prepared and nothing happens, guess what? You're still prepared, right? Like, I live in Florida. At the time of recording, it's the beginning of hurricane season. We have a hurricane plan. If a hurricane doesn't come, great. We're kind of excited about it. But if it does, we're prepared. So I think there's a lot of that that we'll kind of dive into a little bit today as well.
Yeah. What's your RPP? What's your recession preparedness plan?
All right, let's dig in, man. That's a good one. RPP. So what are some steps that businesses should take to basically to even start the process of building a plan?
So when we started to hear this a couple months ago, the stock market, there's, ups and downs. Stock market goes ups and downs, but when it goes way down, people start to have this fear of that. That's almost one of the definitions of an impending recession. It goes back up again. Should we ignore that? No, it means if it can go up, it can go down. If it can go down, hopefully it'll go back up. But that it made me and our teams kind of sit down and think, okay, well, what does that mean to our customers? They're all home service businesses. What would they do in that scenario? And then as a home service business owner myself, what would I do in that scenario? And a couple of things that came to mind was going to outline 3 or 4 things we could consider. One is looking at what is our cost of revenue versus what is our cost of a lead. That's like the very first place to start. And not all lead sources perform the same. Everyone knows that. We all know that. But if you look at the cost of your revenue, when you start to figure what is the best ROI, they're not always the same. ROI tends to get looked at on the business, on the bottom of the P&L as one big, we have this conversion rate of our business, we have this profit margin, so on and so forth. But if you have anything more than one lead source or one sales channel, you actually have different ROIs on all of them, and they all kind of blend together into one thing. And sometimes they work together, but sometimes they don't. So if you actually take the time to look at how much do we pay for a lead, what's the conversion rate from a lead to actually like a quote or an engaged customer, an on-site visit or whatever you do, and then what's our win rate and our average ticket sizes based on where these things came from. If you have 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways you get customers, you're more than likely going to find that 1 or 2 of them are the worst performers. And when everything's above the minimum, fine. Like if you need to have a 3 or 4 or 5x return on ad spend, and every one of them is over that limit, that's okay. Then just keep them all going. But if any of them start to dip below that level, that's where you start to say, well, it would be better to take that money and put it somewhere else. Right? This is just math. But if you haven't taken the time to measure what you are doing and then check back in on it on those baselines on each of those and get with your marketing department or your marketing agency, have them help you with this. Your CRM, your FSM should be able to help you with this. But as recession fears come in, some of those channels may or may not, and more than likely may, be impacted more than others. And so go back and check them and be willing to start shuffling those things around to where can I get a better return on my investment? Not just the leads, take it all the way down to the revenue, the dollars and cents in the door. That's important.
Yeah, and a lot of times, depending on what software people are using, they can get that information as long as they're using tracking numbers and are inputting information correctly into their database. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I think it's crazy important for somebody to be able to track if you're spending, because Google seems to be the big monster that takes the most money, but so many people don't even measure it. They're like throwing money at this thing and not paying attention to what's coming back in on the business. So yeah, definitely having a scorecard per channel, I think would be a great first step.
That for sure. The other thing you can do, you mentioned, dedicated numbers, train your team to ask. I found across my sales career that what is reported is not always what is reality. So, somebody has to come to your website and fill out a thing and it's, where do they hear about you? Or, they filled out a phone number. You're like, well, they called that phone number. It must be from that billboard that the phone number is on. It's like, well, no, actually their neighbor gave it to them, right? Like, or, it said that they just picked the first option on the drop down, or the one that they actually found you wasn't even there. So if your team isn't asking, you're going to miss some of that gold in there, because you're going to miss some of those kind of like hidden lead sources where you might not invest in them as much, or you might not understanding that those are influential. There's single attribution and then there's multi-touch attribution. You might find that you don't spend money on certain things, but they're as much as you should because they're hidden in there. Whereas everything's getting Google. It's like, well, they Googled your phone number. They found that by Googling you, but that's not why. They Googled your phone number because, they saw the commercial you did on television or the radio ad or the outbound email, and they saw an email and that made them think, and then they Googled you later that night or something. So make sure you ask if you really want to know.
Well, and think about like from the gold perspective, from a customer relationship side, when you do ask that question, and to your point, if they Googled you, okay, we just kind of take that as, well, Google did what we paid Google to do. But if the neighbor, Miss Jones, did work, like we did work there, and she raved about it, and she said, that I've got to call them, and you look, and Miss Jones has put in a brand new high efficiency AC system, that gives you some pretty good data when you go out there, one. And two, what a different conversation you're having with the customer. Oh my gosh, we love Miss Jones. We do all her work for her all the time. And man, we're so glad. That's so nice that she's telling people about us. And now you just simply send the customer a text message and say, hey, just want to say thank you real quick. Those small details that sometimes automation we miss.
Yeah, it's great to automate things, but if you automate the human experience out of this, then it's going to be hard to say that we have the best service when you don't actually deliver service. You just deliver machines.
Yeah, you have the most efficient. You're like, we have the most efficient service.
Those are not the same thing. We can get the most efficient or the best cost model, but there's a difference between staying at the Four Seasons and staying at the Hojo. It's a very different thing. One is much more efficient on my pocketbook, but one is an experience, and I'll remember that.
Do Hojos even exist anymore?
I don't think so. I'm dating. I'm old now, so I'll say you stayed at the Holiday Inn Express, whatever it is now.
But all the Hojos you always knew because they had the little A-frame.
Totally, it was a saying when I was growing up. I don't think it exists anymore.
Yeah. So what are some? Okay, so there's a couple of good steps that they could do to prepare. What are some other ideas that are kind of maybe a little bit out of the box?
Okay, so we talked about measuring what matters. That's important. The other is think about if there is a slowdown in opportunities, right? So we're going to say, well, we're seeing some slowdowns in certain channels. That means there's a slowdown. Okay, well, what are the other downstream impacts of that? One thing that we probably all learned during COVID was some things still need to happen. They're just not going to happen right now, right? So we're not going to do this deck right now. Oh, we're not going to have this elective knee surgery right now. There was a bunch of that stuff happening, right? A lot of things just slowed down, but it meant we had a huge backlog of demand. It just kept building and building and building. And then it kind of all dropped at once. So if you pull back entirely or massively, you won't be positioned to capture that later. So think about that. If you're well, we're just going to, get rid of a bunch of staff, or we're just going to shrink it down to the size of the current opportunity, you won't be able to access that demand when it comes out. So what can we do to stay top of mind and to keep our business moving forward, even if it's not growing as fast, keep it going in a forward direction? One is there a subscription we could sell those people right now? Something, maybe we're doing more duct tape and less replacements, but can we service these people? Can we offer them a subscription that gives them some little bit of lower blood pressure on the purchase for now, so that in a year when they're hey, recessions come, recessions go, that's how they work, you're right there. And you got some revenue along the way. So you're not just waiting and starving to death. If you're going to think of going out whale hunting, it's oh, I brought a fishing pole. That's what the subscription can be. That's your fishing pole. You're not going to starve to death.
That's great. Yeah, the subscription model, I think, is finally starting to get some legs a little bit in the home service space. I think for a long time, nobody even thought about the home service space having a subscription based. And now you're starting to see people with maintenance agreements that are, starting to do them on a monthly subscription base, which obviously, well, let's talk about this. What are some advantages to a subscription base portion of your business? Obviously everything, or maybe everything could be subscription based, but what is an advantage to doing some subscription based in your business? So
there's a couple of things in the software world where I live. It's almost all subscription based nowadays. Right. And some of the benefits are you smooth out your cash flow, right? So you're not having spikes, dips. So you have continuity in that revenue. You also, in theory, can create an LTV or long-term value picture of your customer. And if you say, well, I can pay $150 for a lead if I have this conversion rate to a booked booked appointment and a closed deal at this deal size. Okay, that's looking at the one-time event. But if you can look at the customer's lifetime value, then you can say, well, what is the cost of revenue acquisition over that time span? And so it lets you actually model that revenue curve way out into the future because you have a little more predictability into what the future is going to be. It also creates an ongoing relationship with a customer that gives you opportunity to sell them other things. So let's say you are selling pest control. Well, now you want to start offering other lawn services. Let's say you're selling HVAC and you say, well, we're also going to start doing water testing because we're going to start doing some other water purification sales and things like that. So as you layer more products, it's called a layer cake product strategy. It's actually just like kind of software 101 these days, is you start with a platform and then you layer other products on top of it and ultimately try and take as much of the budget as you possibly can. The same strategy can apply to home service business. It starts with what is that base subscription that other things can build on.
Well, not to mention too, for the most part, home service businesses work on mechanical equipment for the most part. Now there's, like you mentioned, pest control. That's not necessarily mechanical, but bugs don't fix themselves. And mechanical equipment doesn't fix themselves. So when you have that stickiness of that customer where you actually can go in and you're at the like top of mind of who to call, back to your point of the fishing pole, they're going to come back to you, especially if you have a really good maintenance plan or subscription-based membership to where it benefits the customer to make sure and come back to you.
I think of two businesses that I think about in this regard, just like top of mind for me. One is, everyone knows Tommy Mello and what he's doing in the space, and he's really kind of built this big moat around their business with being able to sell services and subscriptions around garage doors. It's just garage doors. We all have one. We all need one. So what? Well, we can create a relationship, upsell them. We can sell other services to them, build a huge recurring revenue base. That's just an industry kind of example. One specific to our customer base is a customer we have in Indiana, Millennium Custom Sounds. And so they do super high-end AV equipment. And so they've got a outlet in Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then Naples, Florida. So down by you, Justin. Not too far. And so
around the corner,
around the bend. And they will sell, real like whole home systems, and these things are, six figures, right? So we're talking about what everybody wants to sell is really big stuff. They realized they had this big, huge customer base, and they really weren't going back and servicing it as much as they probably should. They're like, these things we should be touching them more. And so I was actually meeting with the owner, going through that, and we were going through like, what's your process of going back and selling them an ongoing subscription? You realized really what they were missing is on the front door. Someone's making this huge outlay of cash. Hey, here's this little tiny insurance policy on it. Here it is. You're already spending $150,000. Why don't we get you on a $1,200 a quarter or something? Now we have a touch point. We stop by every quarter. It's covering our cost, and we find something. This thing should be upgraded. This should be replaced, right? And we're no longer having to have 95% of the revenue coming one time. That means every year you're starting from zero. It's like, oh, look at this. Now we've got 15, 20% of the revenue is already booked before the year even started. Like, it's already coming in. We know that. That mountain just got a little less daunting. Your sales and marketing managers just got a little more breathing room because they showed up to the party with revenue kind of already on the books, or at least planned to show up.
Yeah, not starting the month at zero. Now you're back to the race. Zero.
Every month, every year at like the bottom of the mountain. It's scary.
I think, too, with your point with whether it's home theaters or HVAC, there's always new products that are coming out, new products, new technology being tied into products that truly customers don't know about. Like they don't know. They're not sitting at home Googling the next cool thing. Like when you talk about garage doors, there was quite a few garage doors at the Power Profit workshop. And I was sitting there talking with one of the guys, and he was talking about one that was completely quiet because you mounted it different and it had not a chain, it had another thing, and you could do it from your phone. You could set it up on as a consumer, I don't know that. Now, I'm sort of in the I'm in the home service space, but even then, like I've never really taken the time to really think about that sort of thing. So what opportunities are you missing with your customer by not talking about the new latest and greatest piece of technology that will, I mean, you don't know if your customer's into that. I can tell you from your example though, if somebody's going to spend 6 figures on a AV system in their home, they like cool stuff. Like you already know your avatar there. They like cool stuff. So if you go in, you're like, hey, check out this new AI thing that'll do this other thing, and it's a plugin and it's only like 25 grand. They're going to be like, that's amazing. I didn't know that existed. Whether they buy or not is not entirely the point, but now you've educated them. So slowly you're becoming their person for that, or their company for that.
Yeah, I had a buddy once, or I had a buddy that was at his house several years ago, and he said, was going for a swim in the summer. He goes, put your head under the water. It's like, put your head under the water and listen. And I put my head under the water, and I could hear music. And I came up like, what is that? He goes, my pool guy came by and he had these underwater speakers and I just had to have them. And like, he wasn't out there Googling underwater speakers, by the way.
Right.
But, your pool guy is always coming by every month, every quarter, right? Got to service that pool. And now it's an opportunity to sell them something. So I don't know how much he makes off the pool subscription, but he made a lot of money off of the cool underwater speakers. I can tell you that.
And the customer loved it. And now he's talked about it with you and showed you.
Yeah, and who do you think has to buy underwater speakers next pool I buy, right? So
see, I thought that was only a Disney thing. I thought that was the only place that actually happened. But
coming soon to a home pool near you. The other thing you said was like the consumer doesn't really necessarily know about this stuff. Like we're all on this podcast listening right now and talking in the home service space. So we think about this all the time. I drive down the street and say home service van, home service van, home service van, but they're not. Any more than you are probably sitting around thinking about, parts of engines if you're not into cars, or, if you're not thinking about whatever the thing is you're not doing, right? You're not thinking about medical equipment if you're not in the medical business. And so giving them that opportunity to like, hey, you didn't even know about this, I brought it to you. That's an opportunity to add value to you and to them.
That's great. Hey, actually, I'm going to share this. So you talked about medical equipment. And this ties into the subscription too, is my wife has had an Aura ring for quite some time. She loves it, tracks all her personal KPIs. And she talked about it and raved about it so much that now I have one. So again, now they've sold me this piece of equipment, and now they get a monthly subscription, and now there's all these other plus that goes with it. And as a customer, I think a lot of times businesses, they have a little bit of a hard time because they feel like they're selling. Like, oh, I'm selling a customer. My point is think about educating the customer. Like you can't make a decision for a customer on what they want. Like Aura didn't sell me the ring and all the things that came from it. My wife sold it. And then for me, I thought, okay, well, here's the benefits that happen by spending, I don't know, it's like $5 or $7 a month or whatever it is, to have this information about me to, live healthier and hopefully longer. But nobody sold me that. It's, it's because it was a referral and it's something cool and I like it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Selling is has a bad connotation, I suppose, but teaching doesn't. The best salespeople in the world are teachers. They teach you about problems that you didn't think you could solve. They teach you about novel ways to solve problems. They teach you about the benefits of things. They don't make the decision for you. You make a decision with that information. They're just really good at teaching you about these different things so you can make those decisions. And you're just teaching your customers about, hey, here's the benefits of having a subscription. We're going to be out here every month, every quarter, whatever it is, looking at this thing. It won't break as often. You don't have to worry about it. If we see something, we'll say something. You don't have to pretend you're an expert in changing air filters in your home or whatever the thing is on your HVAC unit that I don't know how it works at all. And I just don't. And so we do subscriptions at our house. I think we must have 7 or 8 vendors that help service our home.
Yep.
I actually talked to a customer the other day. It was one of the coolest things I've heard recently was they were buying up a couple of different home service businesses. They picked one as their initial platform for their brand. And then they were ringing as many different services around it as they could to sell a $1,500 to $2,000 a month subscription and just say, we will be your one-stop shop for all your home services for everything. So we got your lawn, we got your pests, we got your mosquito, we got your HVAC maintenance. We'll come inspect your roof every year. They're like, we are home service in a box. And then what are they going to do? Anytime any one of those things needs something, it's them.
I mean, that's how condos work.
It's pretty much, we're not reinventing the wheel here, right? It's just, we're taking the condo principle and putting it on your house.
Yeah, you're paying basically your HOA dues for maintenance. You're just paying it, and now because the truth is people want peace of mind, and people aren't technical. They're certainly not as technical as even in the last 20 years. I mean, I think about like as my kids start to have kids and their kids start to drive, there's probably not going to be any liquid in cars anymore. So the old school of changing oil and understanding how things work, that's going to slowly just more and more fade away. So people don't want to be technical. I mean, that's part of the challenge that we're having right now in the staffing part of home services is, people are not as interested in being technical, getting dirty, working with their hands as they used to be. So again, it's not to say that it's for everybody, but certainly for certain buyers, you're really giving them different peace of mind options with different subscriptions.
Yep, I love it. So yeah, the subscription was the other thing. And then the last thing I would suggest everybody looks at as part of a recession preparedness plan is what's your capital position, what's your cost of capital, and what would it do if the cost of capital changed, right? That's not in your control. You can control lots of things. That's not in your control. Not necessarily, you might influence it a little bit based on how you manage your business, but if the cost of capital went up significantly and you're doing a lot of capital management and you're doing a lot of, you need a lot of help from your bank to, smooth out your cash flows and your payrolls and things like that. If it changed a lot, or if your debt service changed a lot, what would that do? Think about it now, pressure test if it went to here, to here, to here. And if you work with a bank, call your bank, ask, hey, what would happen if this happened and this happened? What would that do to my payments? Or would that do to, my notes? Or if you had to call, would there be calls? Like, what would that do to us? Because if you don't know the risk that you face, then that's one of those calls that you don't want to get in the middle of a slowdown. Oh, now we also have a more expensive debt service.
Yeah. And even if you run on basically a cash basis and you don't have loans or whatever in your business, then there's still going to be the cost to borrow money. And even if you're not physically borrowing paper dollars, you're buying trucks, you're buying equipment. There's all those things that are tied into that. And another huge factor that can come about, especially as rates go up as well, is what is the cost for your customer to borrow that money? It's pretty easy sell when you go to a customer and you're like, I got a 0% for 72 months. Let's go. They're like, yeah, free money. Let's do that. It's a totally different ball game when it's 9%, 10%. Customers just look at it from a different perspective. And again, there's nothing you can do about that part of it, but definitely be prepared for if that does happen for sure.
Yeah, an ounce of preparation, right, is worth a pound of profit. So I would say just look at these things. You said the right thing earlier, Justin. You have a plan if there's a hurricane. The best scenario is there is no hurricane and you never use the plan. Have a plan, sit down, talk to your management team, your leadership, your spouse, whoever you work in the business with. What would we do if these things happen? Spend some time, depending on your specific risk, around making a plan, and then maybe implement a couple of things preemptively that would help you either way. Get some subscriptions going in your business. It helps you either way, right? Look at your overall cost of capital. Maybe you find that you're paying more than you have to right now anyway. You could actually it's like calling the cable company back in the day and saying, hey, I think I'm going to leave. They're like, we got a special deal for you. Figure out what you're actually paying. It's a good time to look at those things. You might find that there's some hidden benefits just to doing a little bit of analysis no matter what.
So, Jimmy, before we jump off here, I want to ask a favor from you.
Okay.
And we're on camera, so you have to say yes.
Okay. That's a good time to ask.
Yeah, I know. Will you give us a overview of Glasshouse?
Yes.
And I'm asking that as a favor. And for those of you listening, Jimmy is all about giving, sharing, but sometimes getting him to talk about Glasshouse is not, he's not the sales guy, right? So, and I think there is a tremendous amount of value that Glasshouse brings to home service businesses, which is why I've asked you to be on here a couple of times, because I think it's wildly valuable for somebody to do business with you guys. And so yeah, I'm gonna force you. I'm gonna bully you ethically.
Ethically bullying.
A little bit about Glasshouse.
Ethical bullying. Okay, I appreciate it. I will, since I'm on camera. So we have a mission. We're a mission-driven organization, is to create more profitable home service businesses. And so we do that by helping home service businesses do direct to consumer outreach. We are taking all of our experience in building software companies where you do a lot of direct outreach. You pick up the phone, you email people, you call them, like you go right to your ideal customer profile, your avatar. Home service businesses don't do as much of that as they could, or a lot of them just don't do it at all. And so we've built software, because that's what we know, that helps you do hyper neighborhood targeting. Like the exact example would be what we use in my home service business, which I'm my own customer, is every time we do a quote, we pull that neighborhood. The system lets me just draw around it. It pulls all the information about the houses, all the contact information for the homeowners, and it filters it down and says, this is the type of person I want to reach out to. Here's their emails, here's their phones, here's their names, here's the size of their house, here's the age of the house, here's when they moved. Here's everything you need to know to be really, really relevant in your outreach. And now you can email them and now you can text them right out of the system. So you don't have to stitch a bunch of pieces of technology together. It sits right on top of your FSM or your CRM, and it basically says, every time you're doing a job, let's go create another lead in that neighborhood. Let's go viral. Let's say, hey, we're working with the Deese family. We'd love to work with you. We're going to be there anyway. So you take that field team and you turn them into a leverage point for why should you let us stop by? Because we're already there. That's what we do. We do it with software. We do, consultative services around, we help our customers set it up. But it's your tool and you can run with it and go out there and kind of drum up as much business as you want without having to physically knock a single door. So we call it digital door knocking. And you can digitally door knock 10,000 houses in a couple of hours. That's what we do.
I think it's a pretty awesome idea. And to me, I always think about proactive versus reactive. And I think that's what your services do. It allows businesses to be proactive in a neighborhood versus reactive. Because let's be honest, like the windshield time of a technician can be one of the biggest holes in your boat, depending on what market size you cover. So, Jimmy, for anybody who wants to find out a little bit more or do a demo, how would they get in touch with you guys?
You can book right on our website, or we actually even have videos on our website. So it's glasshouse.biz, glasshouse.biz. And you can book a time on our schedule. We'll walk you through it, 15, 20 minutes of your time, educate you a little bit, answer your questions. So yeah, we're available whenever you want to chat.
Good deal. Well, check it out. And Jimmy, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us a little bit. And as always, it's great to see you, man.
Great to see you. This was fun. Thanks.